Choi Mi-sun had learned not to feel the pain in her back. After 15 years of working in the warehouse, her body had become a well-oiled machine. Lift the box, turn, place it on the cart, repeat. 20 kilograms of canned vegetables, 15 kilograms of rice flour, 30 kilograms of soy sauce. Numbers had become her language, and the calluses on her palms were medals for survival. That hot September afternoon, she was unloading a shipment of ginger. The sharp, spicy scent tickled her nostrils, bringing back memories of something distant and warm, a grandmother's kitchen in the village of Andin, where little Mi-sun would stand on a stool and learn to peel the root properly, along the fibers, to preserve all its aroma. Choi Mi-sun. You have a visitor, yelled the warehouse manager from the second floor, Fat Mr. Kim, who usually dozed in his little office, pretending to supervise the work. Mi-sun wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. A visitor? Here, in the warehouse? Her heart skipped a beat. Could something have happened to Do-won? No, he had never set anyone after her. He rarely even remembered she existed during the day. She descended the metal staircase, her work boots echoing loudly across the huge warehouse. By the entrance stood a man in a formal gray suit, holding a leather folder under his arm. He looked at her with a professional, detached expression. Choi Mi-sun? He asked, even though she was the only woman among the 15 loaders in the warehouse. Yes, that's me. My name is Lee Jae-hwan. I represent the law firm Justice and Law. I am here to deliver these documents to you, he said, handing her a thick envelope. Please sign here to acknowledge receipt. Mi-sun's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. The first words hit her harder than if a box of canned goods had fallen on her foot. Divorce petition. This must be a mistake, she whispered, rereading the lines over and over, as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something else. No mistake, the lawyer said dryly. Your husband, Han Do-won, filed for divorce 3 days ago. The hearing is scheduled for next Wednesday at 10 in the morning. All the details are in the documents. I advise you to hire an attorney. He turned and left, leaving Mi-sun standing in the middle of the warehouse with the envelope in her hands. Around her, life went on as usual. Workers carried boxes, the forklift operated, someone shouted after dropping a pallet. But her world had just shattered into pieces. 15 years. 15 years she had worked here, in this cursed warehouse, breathing in dust and the smell of cardboard. Every evening she went to her second job, at a kimchi packing factory, standing at the conveyor until 2 in the morning, packing jars into boxes. She slept 4 to 5 hours. She had no days off. She had no new clothes. The last time she had been to a hair salon was 7 years ago. All for him. All for Do-won's dream of opening his own restaurant. And now, the divorce? Hey, Mi-sun. You frozen or planning to fly to space? Yelled one of the loaders. She slowly folded the documents back into the envelope and stuffed it into the pocket of her worn work jacket. Her eyes burned with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Not here. Not now. She picked up the next box and carried it to the shelf. Work continued. That evening she didn't go to the factory. For the first time in all these years, she simply got on a bus and went home, to a tiny room in an old building in Moktak, where she and Do-won had lived in the first years of their marriage. He had long since moved to a new apartment closer to the restaurant, and she stayed here because the rent was cheap, and every one she saved went into his business. Mi-sun took the leftover rice and kimchi from the fridge but couldn't eat. She sat at the wobbly table and began reading the documents. The legal language was confusing, but the essence became clearer with each page. Do-won was asking for a divorce. The reason, irreconcilable differences in character and lifestyle. He claimed the restaurant Royal Table as his sole enterprise. She was offered nothing. She grabbed her phone. Her fingers dialed the familiar number automatically. Rings. 5. 7. 10. He didn't pick up. She called again. This time he answered on the third ring. What do you want? I'm busy. Do-one's voice was cold, like ice in a freezer. Do-one, what does this mean? Divorce? Why didn't you tell me yourself? Because there's nothing to talk about. It's already decided. Decided? We've been married 15 years. You can't just. I can, he cut her off. Listen, me son. You're a good woman. You've worked hard. But face the truth. My restaurant is now in the top 20 establishments in Seoul. Important people come to me. Businessmen. Politicians. Celebrities. I need a wife who can match this level. And you. And I what? He was silent. When he spoke again, disgust laced his voice. You smell of fish and sweat. Your hands are rough, like a man's. You have no education, no manners, no style. When my partners asked about my wife, I don't know what to say. I can't show you off. Understand? I can't pretend anymore that there's anything between us. Each word was a knife. Me son couldn't breathe. But the restaurant. I invested all my money in it. Do-one laughed. Short. Bitter. What money, me son? You don't think your loader's salary meant anything? The main capital was invested by my uncle. And your pennies. Well, thanks, I guess. But it's insignificant. 15 years. Yes, I know. And I'm willing to compensate your contribution. We'll settle everything fairly in court. Don't worry, you'll get what you're entitled to. Now, excuse me, I have guests. Don't call this number again. Rings. He hung up. Mi-sun sat in the dark of her little room, staring out the window. Outside, the city lived its usual life. Street lights glowed. Cars passed. People went about their business. And she felt as if she had fallen into a black hole. 15 years of her life erased by a single phone call. Mi-sun hired a lawyer with the last of her savings. Yoon So-hee, a woman of about 40 with a short haircut and a tired face, listened to her story in a small office on the third floor of an old building in Gangnam. Do you understand that this case will be difficult? So-hee said, scanning the documents. You have no official proof of your financial contributions to your husband's business. All transfers were made in cash? Yes, Mi-sun whispered. He said it was easier, fewer taxes. Of course he did, the lawyer snorted. Did you get receipts? Mi-sun shook her head. She trusted Do-one. He was her husband. Then proving anything will be nearly impossible, so he sighed. At best, we can expect compensation under the law regarding jointly acquired property. But even here there's a catch. If your husband proves that the main capital came from third parties, not from the family budget, your share will be minimal. How minimal? Between 5 and 15% of the business value. Mi-sun felt her legs give way. She had spent every one she earned over 15 years. Slept 4 hours a night. Hadn't even bought herself decent clothes. And all she could expect in return was a pitiful percentage. The hearing took place a week later, on Wednesday, just as the summons had indicated. Mi-sun took a day off from the warehouse, the first in 2 years. She put on her only decent dress, a dark gray one she had bought long ago for her cousin's wedding. It hung loosely on her, as she had lost about 10 kilograms over the years. The court was in a huge glass and concrete building. Mi-sun climbed to the 5th floor and found the right office. In the corridor, Do-one was already there. He wore an expensive dark suit, a spotless white shirt, his hair slicked with gel. Next to him stood a young woman in a red dress, beautiful, well-groomed, with perfect makeup. She was saying something to Do-one, and he smiled. When Do-won saw Mi-sun, the smile disappeared from his face. He turned away, as if she didn't exist. Choi Mi-sun? So he called, appearing from the courtroom. Come on, they're calling us. The hearing lasted 2 hours. Do-won's lawyer, a man with a fleshy face and an arrogant manner, methodically tore apart their marriage, portraying Mi-sun as a worthless wife who had contributed nothing of significance to the family's well-being. Mr. Han Do-won independently built a successful business, the lawyer said, pacing in front of the judge's bench. He took loans under personal guarantees, risking his reputation. The principal capital was provided by his uncle, Mr. Han Jin-ho, as confirmed by bank statements. The plaintiff worked in low-skilled positions and, by her own account, handed over her salary to her husband. But let's face the truth, these sums were so insignificant that they could not have meaningfully influenced the development of the business. Do you have proof of these money transfers? Asked the judge, a woman in her 50s with a piercing gaze. No, Your Honor, so he admitted. All transfers were made in cash, without receipts. I see, the judge noted in the documents. Then Do-won spoke. He spoke calmly, confidently, even with a hint of sadness in his voice. I am grateful to Mi-sun for these years. She tried. But our marriage has long been a formality. We have lived separately for 2 years. We have completely different interests, different lifestyles. I tried to talk to her about it, but she wouldn't listen. Now, as my business has reached a certain level, I realize I cannot continue living in a lie. A lie. He called their 15-year marriage a lie. Would you like to add anything? The judge asked, addressing Mi-sun. She stood. Her throat tightened with a spasm. She wanted to scream that this was unfair. That she had killed herself for his dream. That she had sacrificed sleep, health, youth. But the words wouldn't come. She opened her mouth and could not utter a sound. Please sit down, the judge said gently. The decision was announced after 40 minutes of deliberation. The marriage was dissolved. Mr. Han Do-won would pay Ms. Choi Mi-sun compensation equal to 10% of the appraised value of the restaurant royal table. The amount was 8 million won. Payment was to be made within 3 months. 8 million. Mi-sun quickly calculated in her head. Over 15 years of working 2 jobs, she had given Do-won no less than 80 million won. And she received 10%. When they left the courtroom, Do-won approached her. Mi-sun froze. Perhaps he would apologize? Perhaps say something humane? He looked her up and down with disgust. See, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Even here, in court, you came looking like a pauper. Look at yourself. Look at your hands. You look like a servant, not the wife of a restaurant owner. I can't show you to people. You shame me just by existing. He turned and walked toward the exit. The same girl in the red dress waited by the door. She took his arm, and they left together. Mi-sun stood in the empty court corridor, staring at her hands. Yes, they were rough. The skin on her palms calloused, nails short and unpolished. On her right hand was an old burn scar from the kimchi packing factory when she had accidentally touched a hot lid. These were hands that worked. Hands that fed him. Hands that built his dream. And he called them shameful. For the next 6 months, Mi-sun lived in a fog. She continued working at the warehouse. She quit the kimchi factory. She no longer needed to save everyone for Do-won. Now she could sleep 8 hours a night. Strangely, it did not bring relief. She simply lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. Do-won transferred the 8 million won to her account 2 months after the divorce, without meeting her in person. Mi-sun put the money in the bank and didn't touch it. She seemed afraid of the money. It was the price of her humiliation. At the warehouse, people tried to support her. Mr. Kim, who usually only scolded and slept, once brought her a bag of tangerines. "Eat," he said. "You need vitamins. You've gotten way too thin." The young loader, Ho Tae-won, a cheerful 25-year-old, brought her his lunch. "My mom cooks too much. I can't eat it all myself. Will you help?" She knew he was lying. But she accepted the lunchboxes and ate with effort, not to offend him. Sometimes in the evenings, she walked around the neighborhood. Just wandered the streets, looked at shop windows, at people. One day she accidentally ended up in the block where Royal Table was located. The restaurant occupied the first floor of a prestigious building. Huge windows revealed the luxurious interior. Soft lighting. Waiters in black vests. Elegantly dressed patrons at the tables. Mi-sun saw Do-won. He stood at the entrance, greeting guests. Next to him was the same girl in the red dress, now in a tight black suit, looking like a manager. She was explaining something to a visiting couple, smiling and gesturing with manicured hands. Do-won put his arm around her waist. Mi-sun turned away and quickly walked off. She had no strength left to be angry. Only emptiness. In early April, Director Kim called her into his office. "Listen, Mi-sun," he said, scratching the back of his head, clearly embarrassed. "I got a call from headquarters. There will be layoffs. We need to reduce staff by 3 people. You understand? You're the only woman, and your work." Slowest of all, Mi-sun finished for him. "I understand. Sorry. I wouldn't want to, but there's no choice. I'm giving you a month to find a new job." She nodded. Even this news didn't stir any emotion in her. As if everything inside had burned out. The month passed quickly. Mi-sun went to interviews. Supermarkets needed sales clerks, office buildings cleaners, restaurants dishwashers. Everywhere she was hired willingly. She was neat, punctual, reliable. But she still couldn't make a decision. Every offer seemed just a continuation of the same nightmare, working herself to exhaustion for meager pay, and for what? On her last day at the warehouse, Tae-won walked her to the bus stop. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I always felt that you weren't meant to be here." "Why?" "I don't know. I just... Remember that one time you treated us? You brought homemade kimchi and rice balls. It was so delicious that we begged you for the recipe for 3 days afterward. Do you remember?" Mi-sun did remember. It had been about 3 years ago. They were celebrating someone's birthday at the warehouse, and she had made a simple treat. "You could be a cook," Tae-won said. "Seriously. You have talent." She smiled sadly. "Talent? Ridiculous. Do-won had always said she couldn't cook. That her food was too simple, rustic, uninteresting. That real chefs trained for years, and she just chopped cabbage using her grandmother's recipes. Yet Tae-won's words somehow stuck in her mind. The next day, on Saturday morning, Mi-sun decided to go for a walk. She got on a bus and headed to an unfamiliar neighborhood, just a random route. She got off somewhere in Mapo, an old quarter with narrow streets and low buildings. It was quiet here. Nothing like the noisy streets of Gangnam or the ever-rushing Gorosagil. Small shops, cafes with faded signs, elderly women sitting on their doorsteps gossiping about neighbors. It reminded Mi-sun of her native village of Andon, from which she had left straight after school 18 years ago. She turned into an alley. And there she saw it, a small semi-basement cafe with a cracked sign, Home Hearth. The windows were halfway below street level, revealing a modest interior, 6 tables, old wooden chairs. On the door hung a handwritten notice on a sheet from a school notebook, "Cook wanted. Salary negotiable. Contact the owner." Mi-sun stopped. Her feet felt rooted to the asphalt. "Cook." Tae-won's words echoed in her head, "You could be a cook." She pushed the door. A bell jingled overhead. Inside, it was empty. Not a single customer. Behind the counter stood a man, about 35, lean, with dark circles under his eyes. He was wiping glasses with slow, detached movements. When he looked up at me, son, his gaze was so tired it made her uneasy. "Hello," she croaked. "I'm here about the notice." "Oh, yes," he set the glass aside. "I'm J. Guck. I'm the owner. Do you have any experience as a cook?" "No. I mean, I've never officially worked in a kitchen. But I can cook. Homemade food." J. Guck sighed. He looked disappointed, but not surprised. "Look, I need someone who can handle the whole menu. I can't manage alone. My wife used to cook, but she..." He faltered. "Anyway, now I'm alone. And I have a daughter. I can't cook, serve customers, and take care of a child at the same time. Without experience. Sorry, but it probably won't work." Mi-sun should have turned and left. But instead, she heard her own voice. "Let me try. Just once. Right now. Show me your kitchen, and I'll make something. If you don't like it, I'll leave and never bother you again." J. Guck studied her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "All right. The kitchen's there," he said, pointing to a door at the back of the hall. "Cook whatever you want. I have some leftover ingredients in the fridge. Use whatever you find." Mi-sun stepped into the kitchen. It was tiny, 2 burners, an old oven, a small refrigerator, a metal sink. But clean. Everything shined. Knives were hung on a magnetic strip, pots stacked neatly. She opened the fridge. There was little, eggs, green onions, leftover cooked rice, a piece of tofu, a carrot, a couple of dried shiitake mushrooms, a jar of doenjang soybean paste. Mi-sun rolled up her sleeves. Her hands seemed to know what to do. She soaked the mushrooms in warm water, chopped the onion, sliced the carrot into thin strips, crumbled the tofu. She set a pot of water on the stove, added doenjang, a touch of gochujang chili flakes, a clove of garlic. When the broth boiled, she added the vegetables. While the soup simmered, she beat eggs and fried a thin omelet, slicing it into strips. She reheated the rice, adding a little water and sesame oil she found in a cabinet. 20 minutes later, she came out of the kitchen with a tray. On it, a clay bowl of steaming doenjang jjigae, a bowl of rice sprinkled with sesame seeds, and small dishes of omelet and marinated green onions. "Try it," she said simply. J. Guck took a spoon. Scooped up some soup. Tasted it. Froze. He ate slowly, in silence. Finished every last drop. Then put the spoon down and covered his face with his hands. "Sorry," his voice trembled. "It's just... my wife cooked exactly like this. This taste. I haven't tasted it in a year and a half." Mi-sun didn't know what to say. She just waited. "She's dead," J. Guck whispered without lifting his face. 18 months ago. A car accident. She was picking up our daughter from daycare, and a drunk driver." He faltered. "Since then, So-yeon barely eats. I've tried everything. She refuses food. Eats a few spoonfuls of rice, and that's it. Doctors say it's psychological. She misses her mom." At that moment, a thin child's cry came from somewhere above. "Excuse me," J. Guck wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "That's So-yeon. She was asleep. I'll bring her down." He climbed a narrow staircase, presumably to the living quarters. A minute later, he came down with the little girl in his arms. She looked about 5, thin, with huge eyes on a pale face. She buried herself in her father's shoulder and looked at Mi-sun fearfully. "So-yeon, this is Aunt Mi-sun," J. Guck said gently. "She made a really tasty soup. Do you want to try it?" "I don't want to," the girl whispered. "Not even a little?" "No." Mi-sun crouched to be at eye level with the child. So-yeon, do you like stories? The girl nodded cautiously. Then I'll tell you one. When I was little, like you, my grandmother made me a magical soup. She said kind spirits lived in it, chasing away sadness. Do you want me to make you the same soup? Spirits don't exist, So-yeon said seriously. Maybe, Mi-sun agreed. But the taste is still magical. Shall we try? The girl was silent. Then she climbed down from her father's arms. Just a little, she whispered. Mi-sun returned to the kitchen. She made the soup less spicy, added more tofu. Growing bodies need protein. She decorated the bowl with carrot stars and sprinkled sesame seeds. She shaped the rice into small balls, as her grandmother had done. When she brought the dish, So-yeon sat at the table. Carefully tasted. Another spoonful. Another. Delicious, the girl said softly. Just like Mom used to make. She ate half the bowl. Then 2 more rice balls. Jae-guk watched his daughter with a look of wonder. When So-yeon finished, she looked at Mi-sun. Will you come again? If Dad allows. Jae-guk stood. Offered Mi-sun his hand. When can you start? Mi-sun began working at home hearth the next day. Jae-guk offered her a salary of 2 million won per month, more than she had earned at the warehouse and the factory combined. Plus free meals. That's too much, she tried to protest. No, Jae-guk said firmly. You've restored my daughter's appetite. That's priceless to me. The schedule was simple, 10 in the morning to 8 in the evening, 6 days a week, Sundays off. Mi-sun arrived at opening, cooked lunch for So-yeon, then started preparing the menu for the customers. The menu was laughable. Jae-guk had tried to make modern cuisine, pasta, salads, steaks. But he was bad at it. There were few customers, 2 or 3 a day. Why don't you cook Korean food? Mi-sun asked on the 3rd day. Jae-guk shrugged. My wife used to cook. After her death, I couldn't. It was too painful. I thought if I changed the concept, I could manage. But as you can see, it's not working. What if we try again? He looked at her for a long moment. Do you think you can? I grew up in Andon, Mi-sun said. My grandmother was a famous cook in our village. She taught me to make real homemade food. Not restaurant dishes, but the kind mothers make for their children. Maybe that's exactly what we need. The next day, they completely changed the menu. No pasta or steaks. Only what Mi-sun knew by heart, doenjang jjigae with various variations, kimchi jjigae, sundubu jjigae, samjitang, galbi-jjim, assorted banchan, marinated vegetables served as side dishes. And, of course, rice, cooked in an old wood-fired rice cooker Jae-guk had found in the attic. My grandmother cooked on one of these, he said, looking at the soot-stained pot with its wooden lid. Think it will work? Let's try. The wood-fired rice turned out completely different, with a slight smoky aroma and that crispy crust on the bottom Koreans call nuronji. Jae-guk tried it and closed his eyes. Exactly like childhood, he whispered. The first week, there were still few customers. But those who came returned. And a Gemma from the next house brought a friend. The old grandfather across the street started coming for lunch every day. Students from a nearby dormitory stopped by after classes. This reminds me of home, said one shy student with glasses. I'm from Jeollado, and my mom cooks exactly like this. Mi-sun felt something thawing inside her. For the first time in months, she woke up in the morning with anticipation. She thought about new dishes to add to the menu. She went to the market, picked the freshest vegetables, talked to vendors, learned about new pepper varieties and kimchi fermentation techniques. So-yeon grew attached to her. The girl now came down to the café for lunch on her own, waiting for what Aunt Mi-sun would make. Sometimes Mi-sun let her help, washing vegetables, stirring the broth, shaping mandu. My mom used to let me help too, So Yun said once, carefully wrapping filling in dough. She said I'd be a great cook when I grew up. And you will be, Mi-sun smiled. Look how neat your mandu are. One evening, as they were closing, Jae-guk lingered in the kitchen. Mi-sun si, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you married? Do you have a family? Mi-sun was silent. Then shook her head. I was divorced 6 months ago. I see, he said, clearly not wanting to pry. I noticed you sometimes look sad. When you think no one is watching. She smiled faintly. Everything's fine. The past is the past. But it wasn't true. The past still hurt. Especially at night, when Mi-sun lay in her tiny room thinking about wasted years. About Do-won, who had so easily thrown her out of his life. About how she had allowed herself to be used. But during the day, in the home hearth kitchen, the pain receded. Here she felt needed. Here she was valued not for the money she could bring, but for what she could create, flavor, warmth, comfort. 3 months passed. Home hearth began filling with customers. Word of mouth worked better than any advertisement. People came to try food like home and kept coming back again and again. Jae-guk gradually came alive. He was still tired, still had dark circles under his eyes, but now he sometimes joked, played with his daughter, even sang while washing dishes one day. You know, he said to Mi-sun at the end of August, I think we should hire another person. A waiter. 2 of us aren't enough anymore. It was true. At lunchtime, all 6 tables were occupied, and sometimes people waited outside. Mi-sun barely managed to cook, while Jae-guk ran between the kitchen, the dining area, and his daughter. They hired a student named Choi Yuna, a cheerful girl with a short haircut studying culinary arts. She was thrilled to work there. I can learn so much from you, she chirped, watching Mi-sun prepare banchan. In college, they teach us French cuisine, molecular gastronomy, all kinds of modern techniques. But almost nothing about traditional Korean cuisine. They say it's outdated. Outdated? Jae-guk asked. These recipes have been passed down for centuries. They carry the wisdom of generations. Exactly. Yuna agreed. But now everyone chases trends. Everyone wants to be like Europe or America. Mi-sun thought of Do-won's royal table. He had chased trends too. Minimalist presentation, tiny portions on huge plates, odd flavor combinations. The essence was lost. One day in mid-September, when the leaves began to yellow, an unusual customer entered the café. A man around 50, wearing glasses and a strict gray suit. He sat at a corner table, studied the menu for a long time, then ordered a set of several dishes, doenjangjigi, galbi-jjim, 3 kinds of banchan, and rice. He ate slowly, tasting each dish carefully, writing something in a small notebook. Jae-guk was nervous. Maybe he's a critic? He whispered to Mi-sun in the kitchen. Unlikely. We're too small for critics. But when the man finished, he called Jae-guk over. May I speak with your chef? Jae-guk called Mi-sun. She left the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Please, sit, the man said, pointing to a chair across from him. My name is Sung-gyu. I'm a food critic. I write for Taste of Korea magazine. Mi-sun froze. A critic. A real critic in their humble cafe. I came here by chance, Sung-gyu continued. Saw the sign, came in out of curiosity. And you know what? This is the best Korean home-cooked food I've had in the last 5 years. Where did you learn to cook? Nowhere, Mi-sun replied softly. My grandmother taught me. In the village. I see, he smiled. It shows. Your food has soul. It's not technique, not perfected recipes. It's memory. Tradition. Something impossible to replicate by just reading a textbook. He handed her a business card. I want to write an article about your café. If you don't mind. We'd be delighted, Jae-guk exhaled. The article came out 2 weeks later. It was titled Forgotten Taste of Home, How a Small Café in Maple Revives Tradition. Sung-gyu wrote about how modern restaurants chase Western trends, forgetting their roots. And Home Hearth, an island of authenticity in a sea of falseness. After the article was published, chaos began. On the very first day after its release, a line formed outside the café. People waited for an hour just to get inside. Early in the morning, Jae-guk panicked and called me, "Son, what do we do? There are already 30 people waiting, and we haven't even opened yet." They worked from morning until night. Yuna barely kept up with the service. Jae-guk helped in the kitchen. Mi-sun cooked without stopping. Her hands moved automatically: chop, boil, fry, serve. By the end of the first week, they realized something had to change. "We can't serve everyone who wants to come," Jae-guk said at an emergency meeting in the evening after the last customer had left. "The kitchen is too small. There aren't enough tables." Mi-sun's eye is literally collapsing from exhaustion. "Maybe we should expand?" Yuna suggested. "Rent the next door space?" "I don't have that kind of money," Jae-guk sighed. "What about a loan?" Mi-sun was surprised at her own words. She had never involved herself in financial matters, but now she wanted to help. "Loans are risky," Jae-guk shook his head. "What if the popularity drops?" "It won't drop," Yuna said confidently. "People want real food. Food that warms not just the stomach, but the heart." Jae-guk looked at Mi-sun. "And you? What do you think?" "I think we've created something important. And it's worth taking the risk." The next morning, the three of them went to the bank. By early November, Home Hearth had expanded. They rented the neighboring space, knocked down the wall, and increased the number of tables to 15. They hired 2 more staff, a kitchen assistant and a waitress. Mi-sun was now the head chef. She designed the menu, trained the staff, and ensured quality. It was a strange feeling, leading people. She had spent her whole life being led. But Jae-guk believed in her, and gradually she began to believe in herself. So-yeon started school. Now she came to the cafe after classes, did her homework at a corner table, and helped wash vegetables. She blossomed, her cheeks pink, her eyes sparkled. She laughed often. "Aunt Mi-sun," she said one day, "can you be my mom?" Mi-sun froze, knife in hand. "So-yeon, you had a mom. And she loved you very much." "I know," the girl nodded seriously. "But she's in heaven. And you're here. And Dad said there's room in the heart for love for more than one person. So I can love my mom in heaven and you here too." Mi-sun felt a lump in her throat. She sat down beside the girl. "I'd be glad to be someone important to you. But the decision of what to call me should come naturally. Okay?" So-yeon nodded and hugged her. Her relationship with Jae-guk was also changing. He started staying in the kitchen longer than necessary. They talked about recipes, life, and the past. He told her about his wife, Eugene, how they met at university, how she dreamed of opening a small family cafe, and how happy they were when So-yeon was born. "When she died, I wanted to close the cafe," he admitted. "But it was the only thing I had left from her. Her dream. I couldn't just abandon it." Mi-sun told him about Do-won. About 15 years of hard work. About the divorce. About the words that still burned inside her, "You disgrace me." "He was a fool," Jae-guk said simply. "Only a fool doesn't see the value of the person beside him." Their hands accidentally touched as they both reached for a cloth. They pulled back, embarrassed, and laughed. "Sorry," Jae-guk muttered. "It's okay," Mi-sun replied, feeling her cheeks burn. In mid-November, an event happened that changed everything. A black car with tinted windows pulled up to the cafe. Out stepped an elegant woman, about 40, in an expensive coat and sunglasses, even though it was cloudy outside. She entered, looked around, and sat at an empty table. No one paid her much attention, the customers were busy eating. She ordered one dish from each category on the menu. She ate slowly, tasting each dish carefully, taking notes on her phone. Then she paid, left an enormous tip, and left. She's kind of strange, Una noted. All important and serious looking. A week later, early one December morning, Jay Guck received a call on his mobile. He listened, paled, repeated questions. Then slowly sank into a chair. Jay Guck S.I., what happened? Mi-sun asked, alarmed. He looked at her with a vacant expression. It was a call from Michelin. They are inviting us to the star ceremony. They said we need to prepare. The official announcement will be in 3 days. Silence. Michelin? Una asked. The real Michelin guide? Yes. But we're just a small cafe. Michelin usually awards big restaurants. In recent years they've changed their policy, Jay Guck murmured, still in shock. Now they reward authenticity and quality, not luxury. That woman a week ago. She was an inspector. She came incognito. Mi-sun sank into a chair beside him. A Michelin star. It was impossible. She, who a year ago was unloading boxes in a warehouse, was about to receive a Michelin star. I can't handle it, she whispered. It's too much responsibility. Jay Guck took her hand. You can. You already have. You created this place. You breathed life into it. A Michelin star is just recognition of what you've already done. The next 3 days passed in tense anticipation. They told no one, but rumors leaked, someone had seen a car with the Michelin logo. Customers began asking if it was true. Then, on Saturday evening, the official Michelin website published the new list of awarded establishments. Home Hearth received 1 star. The description read, authentic Korean home cooking, made with love and respect for tradition. Here, you can taste the real Korea, the one that lives in memory and in hearts. That same evening, the news featured a segment on newly awarded restaurants. At the end of the program, another story appeared, scandal at a well-known Gangnam restaurant. Royal table temporarily closed after a mass food poisoning incident. 15 people sought medical help. The health authorities are investigating. Mi-sun watched the television screen in the cafe. They showed royal table, sealed doors, police cars outside. Then Do-won's face, confused, aged, frightened. A reporter shoved a microphone at him. Mr. Han, is it true that you were skimping on ingredients? Do-won waved it off and walked past, covering his face with his hand. After the Michelin star announcement, Home Hearth became a place of pilgrimage. Reservations had to be made a week in advance. Lines appeared. Journalists requested interviews. TV programs invited Mi-sun as a guest. She refused most invitations. She was uncomfortable on camera, didn't know how to speak elegantly. But Una persuaded her to agree to at least one interview for the local TV station. People need to know your story, the girl insisted. It's inspiring. The filming took place in the cafe itself. A young journalist asked questions about the path to success, the recipes, the philosophy behind the cooking. Mi-sun answered simply and honestly, about her grandmother who taught her to cook, about how real food doesn't need complicated techniques, only love. And what did you do before becoming a chef? The journalist asked. Mi-sun paused. Then decided not to hide the truth. I worked as a loader in a warehouse. 15 years. And at night as a packer in a factory. I never trained as a chef. I don't have a diploma. Only my hands and the memory of tastes from childhood. That's amazing. How did you dare to make such a change in your life? Sometimes life makes decisions for us, Mi-sun replied. The main thing is not to be afraid to start over, even when it seems too late. The program aired 3 days later. Mi-sun didn't watch it. She felt awkward seeing herself on screen. But the next morning, when she arrived at the café, Jae-guk greeted her with an unusual expression. We have a visitor, he said quietly. He's waiting for you. He said it's important. Who? Your ex-husband. Her heart sank. Mi-sun froze in the doorway. Do-won. Here. She forced herself to walk in. He sat at the table by the window, the same one where the Michelin inspector had once sat. But how he had changed in 6 months. His expensive suit now hung loosely, as if he had lost weight. His face was gaunt. Dark circles had formed under his eyes. His hands nervously crumpled a napkin. When he saw Mi-sun, he tried to smile, but it looked pathetic. Hi, he said. You look good. She said nothing. Just stood and looked at him. I watched the show yesterday, Do-won continued. A Michelin star. Congratulations. You did it. I always knew you could cook, but I didn't think. What do you want, Do-won? Mi-sun interrupted. Her voice was colder than she expected. He swallowed, looked out the window, then back at her. I need help. Financial help. Royal table has been closed. The fine is enormous. Plus lawsuits from those affected. The bank is demanding the loan be repaid. I'm on the brink of bankruptcy, Mi-sun. If I don't find the money, I'll lose everything. Everything, she repeated. You'll lose everything. And why should I care? Please, his voice trembled. I know I behaved terribly. I was a fool. But we were married 15 years. Doesn't that mean something? It did, she corrected. Past tense. Those 15 years meant nothing to you when you filed for divorce. When you said I smelled like fish and sweat. When you called me a disgrace. Do-won buried his face in his hands. I was an idiot. I got carried away by success. I thought I needed another life, another woman. Hyun-ju. She seemed so perfect for my image. But when problems started, she left. Just packed her things and left. And I was left alone. And you came to me, Mi-sun stated. Because there was no one else. No. I mean. Yes, but not only because of that. Mi-sun, I realized the mistake I made. You were there all those years. You believed in me. And I threw you away like trash. Forgive me. Please. You know, Do-won, 6 months ago I probably would have forgiven you. I might even have given you money. Because I still felt guilty. I thought I really wasn't good enough. That I had let you down. You never let me down, he whispered. But now I understand something different, she continued. The problem wasn't me. The problem was you. You used me. 15 years. You took my money, my energy, my time. And when you squeezed out everything you needed, you threw me away. Like a squeezed lemon. I didn't, don't interrupt me, her voice hardened. I want to tell you something. When I received those 8 million won from the court decision, I felt humiliated. It felt like I had been robbed. But you know what? That money freed me. It became the price of my freedom. And I am grateful for that. Do-won looked at her, confused. You came to ask for money, Mi-sun said. Fine. I'll give you money. Exactly as much as you gave me. 10% of what you owe me for 15 years of work. She took an envelope from the pocket of her apron and placed it on the table. Inside was a check for 8,000,000 won. These are the very funds I received from the court. I never spent them. They sat in the bank, waiting. Now I understand why. To give back to you. So we're even. Do-Won opened the envelope with trembling hands. 8,000,000. That's nothing. I need at least 50,000,000 to pay off the debts. That's your problem, Mi-sun said calmly. I gave you exactly what you deemed enough for me. Fair, isn't it? She stood. Don't come here again, Do-Won. I have a new life. And there's no place in it for past mistakes. She turned and went to the kitchen without looking back. Behind her, she heard a chair being pushed, footsteps, and a door closing. Jae-guk was waiting for her in the kitchen. He looked at her with concern. Are you okay? Mi-sun took a deep breath. Exhaled. And for the first time in months, she felt a lightness in her chest. As if a heavy burden had been lifted. Yes, she smiled. I'm completely fine. After Do-Won left, Mi-sun felt a strange relief. She had closed that chapter of her life. Completely and irrevocably. Now she could move forward. December was a crazy month. Home Hearth couldn't keep up with the flood of customers. They had to turn people away, apologize, promise that things would improve in the future. Jae-guk suggested opening a second hall on the second floor, but Mi-sun refused. No, she said firmly. We won't chase quantity. Let's have 15 tables, but every dish will be made with heart. I don't want this place to become a conveyor belt. Jae-guk looked at her with admiration. You're right. As always. Their relationship changed quietly. They began spending more time together, not only at work. On Sundays, when the café was closed, they walked with So-yeon in the park. The girl ran ahead, collecting fallen leaves, while they walked side by side, talking. About life, about plans, about dreams. Do you know what I dream of? Mi-sun said one day, sitting on a bench and watching So-yeon feed the ducks. I dream of opening a small cooking school. Teaching people to cook simple home food. Not for restaurants, but for family. So that people remember the taste of childhood. That's a beautiful dream, Jae-guk said, looking at her. And I'm sure you'll make it happen. She corrected. We'll make it happen. If you want to be part of it. He took her hand. Simply took it and held it. She didn't pull away. Mi-sun sai, he began softly, I've wanted to tell you something for a long time. But I'm afraid it might sound inappropriate or too soon. Speak, she interrupted. I'm 40. I've spent half my life on a man who didn't value me. I don't have time for unfinished sentences. He smiled. You've changed our lives. Mine and So-yeon's. You brought light back into our home. I wake up in the morning and look forward to the day, because I know I'll see you. So-yeon is happy for the first time since her mother died. And I've fallen in love with you. Probably a long time ago. I was just afraid to admit it even to myself. Mi-sun felt her pulse quicken. But it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. I feel something too, she admitted. But I'm scared. I just came out of a long relationship that caused me pain. I'm not sure I'm ready to. We're in no rush, Jae-guk interrupted. We have time. As much time as you need. I just wanted you to know how I feel. At that moment, So-yeon ran up to them, out of breath and excited. Look what I found. She held out a red autumn leaf to Mi-sun, perfectly shaped, without a single flaw. This is for you. Because you're beautiful. Mi-sun took the leaf. Looked at the girl, then at Jae-guk. And realized she had found what she had been searching for her whole life, without even knowing it. A family. A real family, where she was valued not for what she gave, but simply for who she was. On New Year's Eve, the café held a small celebration. They invited only the closest people, regular visitors who had become almost family. Mr. Kim came with his wife. Taewon brought his girlfriend. Sungyu, the critic who had introduced Home Hearth to the world, came with a bottle of expensive soju. Mi-sun cooked all day. Traditional New Year dishes: taeguk, rice cake soup, mandu, fried John pancakes, hangwa sweets. Everything her grandmother had prepared many years ago in the distant village of Anong. When the clock struck midnight, everyone went outside to watch the fireworks. Jae-guk wrapped his arms around Mi-sun's shoulders. So-yeon stood between them, holding their hands. "Happy New Year," Jae-guk whispered. "Happy New Year," Mi-sun replied. And it truly was a new year. A new life. A new her. 6 months passed. Spring turned to summer. Home Hearth continued to thrive, maintaining its popularity. Mi-sun opened a small cooking school on the second floor. On weekends she held workshops for anyone interested. She taught people to cook simple home dishes, told stories about traditions, about the importance of staying connected to one's roots. Her students were diverse: young mothers wanting to feed their children healthy meals, elderly people nostalgic for the flavors of their youth, students living far from home, even professional chefs admitting they had forgotten how to cook simple, soulful food. One July evening, as the cafe was closing, Jae-guk asked Mi-sun to come up to the roof. She was surprised. They rarely went up there, and the old tables and broken chairs were still there. But when she climbed up, she gasped. The roof was decorated with strings of paper lanterns. On the table was simple food, her own cooking: rice, soup, banchan, and a bouquet of wildflowers in a clay vase. So-yeon stood in the corner, barely containing her delighted laughter. "What is this?" Mi-sun asked. Jae-guk approached her, took her hands. "Mi-sun-isai. Or can I just say Mi-sun? I'm not good with words. I'm a simple man. I have a small cafe and a daughter who sometimes misbehaves. I don't have lots of money or a big name. But I have a heart that belongs to you. Completely. Unconditionally. Become my wife. Become So-yeon's mother. Become officially part of our family, not just in fact." He dropped to one knee and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring with a tiny stone. "It's not a diamond," he said apologetically. "It's a moonstone. My mother wore one. She said moonstone brings happiness to a home." Mi-sun looked at the ring. Then at Jae-guk. Then at So-yeon, who couldn't hold back and ran up to them. "Say yes." The girl whispered. "Please say yes. I want you to be my mom so badly." Tears ran down Mi-sun's cheeks. But they were happy tears. For the first time in years, happy tears. "Yes," she said. "Of course, yes." Jae-guk slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for her. He stood and hugged her. So-yeon wrapped her little arms around both of them. They stood there on the roof together under the paper lantern garlands, and Mi-sun felt a happiness that her heart could hardly contain. "I love you," she whispered to Jae-guk. "Both of you. You both." "There are 3 of us now," So-yeon corrected. "We're a family." Yes. They were a family. The wedding was small, in early September, exactly 1 year after Mi-sun had first stepped into Home Hearth. There were only a few guests, just the closest people. The ceremony took place right there in the cafe, among tables and the smells of home-cooked food. Mi-sun wore a simple white dress, without frills or excess. So-yeon carried the rings on a silk pillow, serious and important. Jae-guk couldn't hold back his tears as they exchanged vows. After the ceremony, when the guests had left and So-yeon was asleep upstairs, they sat together in the kitchen, drinking tea. In silence. And the silence was filled with peace. You know what I'm thinking? Mi-sun said. If someone had told me a year ago that I would be here, in this cafe, married to a wonderful man, with a daughter I love as my own, and with a Michelin star, I wouldn't have believed it. I thought my life was over, that I was just surviving the rest of it. And now? Now I understand that life is just beginning. At 40. Strange, isn't it? Not strange, Jae-guk kissed her temple. Right. Everything happens in its own time. Through the window, the street was visible. City lights. People hurrying about their business. Somewhere in this huge city lived Do-won. Maybe he had found a way out of debt. Maybe not. Mi-sun didn't know and didn't want to know. It was no longer her problem. She had built her own happiness. With her own hands. The same hands Do-won had called rough and ugly. Hands that could create not only food but warmth, comfort, and love. Thank you, she whispered. For what? Jae-guk asked, surprised. For seeing me. The real me. Not how I appeared from the outside, but how I am inside. You can't not be seen, he smiled. You shine from within. They sat there, holding each other, in the small kitchen of the small cafe that had changed their lives. Outside, autumn was approaching, a time of harvest, a time to be grateful for what had been sown and nurtured with patience and love. Mi-sun had harvested her own life. And it was sweet. 2 years later, Home Hearth received its second Michelin star. By then, Mi-sun had published a cookbook, Taste of Home, which became a bestseller. So-yeon had entered 3rd grade and declared that she wanted to become a chef like her mother. Jae-guk opened a second cafe in a neighboring district, but managed it himself, leaving Mi-sun to head the original Home Hearth. They were partners in everything: business, family, life. Sometimes, late at night, when the cafe had closed and they were left washing dishes together, Jae-guk would ask, "What are you thinking about?" And Mi-sun would always answer the same thing: "How lucky I am. That I didn't give up a year ago. That I dared to start over. That I met you." "I'm the lucky one," he'd reply. "Both of us," she smiled. And it was true. Life gave her a second chance. And she embraced it fully. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to anyone. But simply to be happy. And to make those around her happy. She turned pain into strength, humiliation into motivation, and loss into a new gain. She prepared her comeback. And it was spicy like ginger, sweet like a honeyed pear, and warming like homemade soup on a cold evening. She triumphed. Not over Do-won, he had defeated himself. She triumphed over her fear, her self-doubt, and her habit of living in the shadow of someone else's life. Now she was the sun in her own life. And that sun shone brightly.